quick disclaimer as far as the kind of books I like to read. Hey guys, it's Britt. I am really excited about today's video. I am going to be starting a new series on my channel that I personally am very excited about, and I think it will excite other people, but definitely not everyone. And that series is going to be a Britt's Book Club series. I am a huge bookworm. I love reading. I go through books like a crazy person. And so I love when other YouTubers do book-related videos. I think for this first one, I'm going to talk about 3 books that I've read recently that I really enjoyed, and 2 books that it's been quite a while since I've read them, but they're books that have really stuck with me, like as lifetime favorites. So that's gonna be the first Britt's Book Club video. And then I think I'll probably do one of these every few months or so as I read more books, and maybe in those I'll talk about all the books that I've read since then, whether good or bad, so that if there's a book that I feel like is really well hyped and then I read it and didn't personally like it, maybe I'll talk about that, so then you can see kind of a different perspective. If you're a reader like me, then I'm sure you will enjoy this video. If you're not a reader, then unfortunately this video is probably just not for you. So let's get going with a Britt's Book Club. I don't know what that voice was. I'm just gonna do a quick disclaimer as far as the kind of books I like to read. You're so rude!
Banda! Zoe wants to
God! That was so rude. Oh, Zoe sees the garbage can. The garbage man. Oh, it does the garbage man.
Come on, Zoe.
Please don't do that again. Okay. I lost my train of thought. Now. What a jerk. Okay. I'm all thrown off now. Let me just do a quick disclaimer about the kinds of books that I like to read, because they might not be everyone's cup of tea. I definitely have kind of a style. I am very much so a fiction reader. When I read, I like to get lost in a ridiculous story of something made up. Like, that's just what I am. I just love fiction novels. Despite being 26 years old, I very much tend to gravitate towards the young adult style books. I just like them. I also definitely have a theme of like dystopian style books, future, the world is changing, this is what the world looks like in the future kind of books. I just like those kind of books. I know some people are probably gonna be like, oh my god, you read such trash books, that's so stupid. Like, I read to get lost in the world of reading, and those are the books that I enjoy. So if you think that those are the kind of books that you like to read as well, then this series will definitely be for you. Jumping in to the first book, all of my books that I read on my iPad or my iPhone. Ben laughs at me because like any spare moment, I just whip out my phone and I'll start reading. We'll be watching a show and he will get up to make us popcorn and I will start reading in that time. Like, I just read in spare moments. I think that's why I finish books so quickly. So I love having them on my phone and my iPad. I use the Kindle app and it's perfect. So I'm going to talk about first the book series that I'm currently reading. And this is one that I've honestly seen a ton of YouTubers talk about. It's a very well-known series. It's an old series. It's like 10 years old or so at this point. But I'm just now reading it because honestly, you guys, I have lists and lists, literally pages and pages of books that I want to read. So it's like I watch a YouTube video about this. Excuse me, I have lists and lists of books that I want to read, and so I'll hear somebody talk about one. I'll be like, I'm gonna write that down, and then it's like months/years until I actually get to it. So that's what happened with this series. It's been on my list for a long time, and I'm finally reading it, and now I understand why so many people talked about it. And it definitely fits into my mold of the books I like, being a dystopian, young adult series, and the series is The Uglies by Scott Westerfeld. I'm sure you've heard about it. It's a series of 3 books. I'll just read you a little bit of a blurb from the first one. So it's The Uglies, the Pretties, and the Specials. Playing on every teen's passionate desire to look as good as everybody else, Scott Westerfeld projects a future world in which a compulsory operation at 16 wipes out physical differences and makes everyone pretty by conforming to an ideal standard of beauty. Tally Youngblood is one of the most daring of the Uglies, and her imaginative tricks have gotten her in trouble with the menacing Department of Special Circumstances. She has yearned to be pretty, but since her best friend Shay ran away to the rumored rebel settlement the Uglies have called the Smoke, Tally is troubled. The authorities give her an impossible choice. Either she follows Shay's cryptic directions to the Smoke with the purpose of betraying the rebels, or she will never be allowed to become a pretty. So the series follows Tally Youngblood, who is an Ugly. Her life is ugly. She watches across the city, the town of the new pretties. Basically, you become pretty and you have essentially no responsibilities while you're a young pretty. You party, you have fun, you're beautiful, and that's what all of the Uglies want to be. She's dreamt about this all this time, and then she meets this girl Shay who tells her about Uglies that have actually run away, that not every Ugly becomes pretty. There's this place called the Smoke for those that don't want to be pretty, and Tally couldn't understand why you wouldn't want to be pretty. But she gets faced with this ultimatum where basically you go or you don't become pretty. And so it follows her story of deciding what to do, learning more about what it really means to become pretty. In the story, Tally, she's a very free spirit in the sense that she is very independent and she doesn't want anyone to tell her what to do, whether it's special circumstances, her pretty friends, her rebel friends. You know, the story is very much about her coming into her own, being independent, and, you know, really ultimately fighting for what you believe is right. I'm absolutely loving the series. I'm halfway through the 3rd book right now, and I love it. The next book I'm going to talk about actually isn't a dystopian style. It's a little bit different. It is called Reconstructing Amelia by Kimberly McCrate. I'll give you a little bit of a blurb of it. Kate believes her daughter, 15-year-old Amelia, has committed suicide jumping from the roof of her private school until she receives an anonymous text saying, "Amelia didn't jump. Could she have been murdered? ... And that's what I'll leave you with that. It follows a mother's journey in trying to figure out what actually happened to Amelia, and through that journey, there's a lot of involvement in looking through cell phone, looking through emails, and basically finding out all of these details behind whether Amelia did commit suicide or not. It touches a lot on bullying, cyberbullying, peer pressure. I definitely think it's one of those books that teenagers should read because it does touch on those important things which are very real in the world today. And so it kind of ends with a twist. You find out what really happened to Amelia, whether she was murdered or whether she did commit suicide, and all of these events that led up to it, which her mother discovers. It's definitely a book that's a little bit on the darker side because it does deal with things like bullies and suicide, but it is definitely worth the read, and if anything, I think people can learn something from it. So that's that book. The 3rd book, which is actually also a series that I'm going to talk about, is another one that I have seen a million people talk about, and it's another one of those ones that has been on my list for a long time. This one is definitely geared towards the younger generation. Super easy read, definitely made for young adults or teens, but I thoroughly enjoyed this series. It is the Selection series by Kira Cass. Now Ben's playing video games. This is another one where it's a trilogy. For 35 girls, the selection is the chance of a lifetime, the opportunity to escape a rigid caste system, live in a palace, and compete for the heart of the gorgeous Prince Maxim. But for America Singer, being selected is a nightmare. It means turning her back on her secret love with Aspen, who is a caste below her, and competing for a crown she doesn't want. So this is a dystopian version of The Bachelor, which I love The Bachelor. It's my favorite show. It's my guilty pleasure. I love The Bachelor. This is literally The Bachelor for teenagers who are wanting to become a princess. So the story based around America Singer. Her family wants her to, you know, try out for the selection process, and it kind of follows her journey through that. And she's definitely not the typical girl who wants to join the selection. Those girls really want to be a princess. They really want to be with this prince. They really want the life of royalty and all of that. And America really doesn't want that. She's in love with someone who is a caste below her, which the caste system is basically the world has been turned into these groups, you're these levels, and level 1 is like the rich, the famous, you know, all of that, and then it goes down to level 8, which is like the homeless. There's certain jobs specified for each caste system, and you're really not supposed to marry lower than your caste. And so it just kind of revolves around her story and the selection system and that whole process. And it is definitely, like I said, very young adult, but it intrigued me till the end. If you're into kind of girly books like that and you like The Bachelor, you'll enjoy that series. And so that covers the 3 books that I've read recently. And really quickly, I'm just gonna talk about 2 books that I read quite a while back and really have stuck with me, and they're ones that I recommend absolutely. And the first one is one that is not dystopian. It is called We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. This book is one that I think about from time to time because it's one of those books that you read, you finish, and you immediately want to read it again. So the book is, each summer the wealthy, seemingly perfect members of the Sinclair family gather on their private island. We Were Liars is the story of those annual reunions, in particular, what happened during a summer that protagonist Cadence is unable to remember. So it basically follows the story of this family, their friends, who go to this island every year, and kind of the dynamic of that family. And I don't want to say too much. It's really just one that you need to read to understand. And I feel like it unfortunately is one of those books that you kind of either love it or hate it. I loved it. And like I said, the second I finished the book, I wanted to read it again. My mom read it and did not like it at all. The way it turns out, I think it can either really piss you off or you can just be really impressed by the way it was written and the storyline and all of that. So it's definitely one that I highly suggest checking out because it kind of has a twist at the end that you just need to read it. Okay. I'm not very good at describing books, I've realized, especially after, like, because I read so many of them that sometimes it's kind of hard to remember exactly. I just know that I really liked it, so there's that. The last book is again a series, and this is a series that when I read this, and it was a while ago, when I read this, I was just blown away. The storyline, the concept, it's one of those books that I was like, oh, please make this into a movie because I'd be so fascinated to see how they would do it, but no way would it compare to the book. It is called Unwind by Neil Shusterman. And I just realized that, so when I read it, there was 3 books. I just realized that there's a 4th book in this series that has come out since I read it almost a year ago that I honestly had no idea about. Because again, I have my list of books and it's like I'm going down that list and I don't even realize if another book came out in a series I've read. So I need to read that. But the premise of the Unwind series is, between the ages of 13 and 17, parents or guardians can choose to have their children unwound, which involves having every part of their bodies harvested to be donated to another person. So technically, they don't really die. The complex and compelling plot follows 3 teens whose stories intertwine when they escape while on their way to harvest camps. So this is dark, you guys. It's strange, and it's dark, and it's weird. But the storyline so utterly compelled me. I don't know if it's because it was so weird and far-fetched and it's like, this is dystopian, but could this really ever happen? It's like parents would send like their troubled teens to be unwound because they're just too much for them. And the fact that there could be a world that parents would do that is just crazy. It's been a really long time since I've read this book, but I still wanted to recommend it because it was one that I still always think about as being honestly one of the best series I've ever read, and I've read a lot of series. So now I really need to go read that 4th book. I mean, just let that idea of having your body parts completely taken off of your body and passed around to other people, and how a world like that would be like. Pretty crazy. These dystopian authors, like, honestly, there's so many different concepts people come up with for futuristic worlds that is just crazy. So that's the end of my first Britt Book Club video. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much. I definitely want to make this into a series, and I'm going to start actually jotting some notes as I read my books of things to talk about when I make these videos, because so many of these books, it's been quite a while since I've read, so I couldn't really talk too deeply about them. And please let me know if you like this series. Please leave in the comments any books you'd recommend so that I could read them and then potentially talk about them in my next Britt's Book Club video. I always am looking for book recommendations, so give this video a thumbs up if you are a bookworm like I am. Be sure to subscribe so that you can be notified next time I post a Britt's Book Club series. And I think that's everything. I've been talking a while. I hope this video isn't too long. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. Can you hear that? I love to hear what other people like reading, so seriously, if you guys can hear that, that's just Ben playing video games. Like, I sincerely apologize. I definitely, now that I definitely, and be sure to subscribe so that you can see the next Britt's Book. Oh my God, I'm a hot mess. Be sure to subscribe that you, be sure to subscribe so that you can watch me.
What's going on? What are you doing?
Looking! All of my supplies.
Did you fall?
No, I jumped.